Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, who is, of course, Talk's international editor. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Morning. So do you think the 45 minutes that Sir Keir was supposedly on the phone to the White House, do you think that 40 of those was on hold?
I suspect that may well be the case, because they can technically then say, well, it was a 45-minute call. How much of the speaking? I mean, the readout from the White House is even shorter than the one from Downing Street. It doesn't appear to me to look like a conversation that took 45 minutes to have.
I just can't imagine anyway Trump putting up with 45 minutes of Keir Starmer. I mean, even sort of 10 minutes is enough to make the most patient person kind of switch off somewhat. So I can't see Trump actually having the time in his diary to listen to that guy droning on and on. You were showing some pictures earlier of him, of the Prime Minister with Rachel Reeves and I think Ed Miliband, a bunch of others. For the benefit of those who didn't see the pictures, our government, our cabinet, they basically look like a bunch of G4S guys doing a tour of a warehouse or something, being shown, right, this is where you need to watch out for the security in that corner and that corner. I mean, does that look like a government to you?
It really doesn't, does it? It looks like some people waiting around backstage for a Taylor Swift concert, perhaps.
It's something like that. Yeah, they're basically the security guys at an Amazon warehouse or something.
Oh, I know. I mean, and continually we get this kind of nonsense. I mean, we've got a load of clips. I'm not even sure if I want to play them, to be honest, about Rachel Reeves from Accounts talking at the weekend. I'll play two. I'll play you one where she's talking about the pan-Euro-Mediterranean deal, I think, to Trevor Phillips.
God.
Well, it was really interesting to see Maroš Šefčovič this week suggest that Britain might be welcome.
The EU Trade Commissioner.
Yeah, the UK might be welcome in that pan-European and Mediterranean customs framework.
Customs framework are fixing the foundations. They're sort of morphing into one person, though, aren't they? Rachel Starmer.
Oh, God, don't do that to me. When people talk about pan anything, all I can think of is like pan fried chicken or something.
Yes.
It just lose my concentration.
I know. It is awful, but let's talk about something that you raised earlier about the state of the nation, the state of the nation's finances and the terrible mess that we appear to be in. Because no matter how many times Rachel Reeves talks about growth, there isn't any, right? It's not happening.
I mean, the big question to me today is Britain going bankrupt? You know, I wake up and see ghastly headlines yet again in the newspapers, this time about how an awful lot of people in our country are facing huge hikes to their council tax bills. Not 3 or 4 or 5%, which is bad enough. You know, we're already clobbered to a huge degree on council tax for questionable services, you know, rubbish that only gets collected every 2 weeks. And if you happen to miss the crucial moment, then your bins will sit there for another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now it seems that there's a string of councils that are so close to going under, they are literally going bust, that they're using a special provision that enables them to hike council tax by up to 25%. And just to repeat that, they are doing this because they are going bust. And I think that is a symbol of what is happening across the country. Basically, the state has got so unwieldy, it's got so huge, it is paying out to do so many things for so many people, many of whom bluntly shouldn't be here. We saw at the weekend 1 in 12 Londoners is an illegal immigrant. It has huge cost implications that we as a country are literally on the verge of going bankrupt. And there is evidence of that every single day. So far from growth, what we've got is, at the very best, a kind of stagnant situation. And remember that a lot of the changes that Rachel Reeves announced in her catastrophic budget last year haven't even come into effect yet.
No, exactly. It's going to get even worse. And that is really the problem, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we cannot continue to keep paying for things that we can't afford. I mean, we keep being now told this morning in the Times that, oh, we can't possibly raise the amount of money we put into our defence because at the end of the day, we haven't got any money, you know?
Well, I mean, we've got money. It's just how we're choosing to allocate it. And it's being allocated in all the wrong ways. You know, we're continuing to throw vast sums of money at an NHS that is quite evidently broken, as a shocking account in one of today's papers it's an anonymous diary by an A&E doctor of the scenes of devastation where he works, including a mother who couldn't speak any English, coming in carrying a dead child in her hands. You know, is this what Britain has become? It's literally like something out of the third world, and yet, you know, Labour still seem to think that the one way they can perhaps stagger back to some level of popularity is by terrifying voters that under any other party the NHS would be written off. Well, maybe it's time that actually we did contemplate a different system to deliver care that people can actually be proud of.
Well, exactly right. And this morning we've got yet more ideas on that from West Streeting, saying, oh, don't worry, we're going to move A&E out of A&E and we're actually going to come to your house instead. Well, that's never going to happen because we haven't got enough people to do it in the A&E. So how on earth are they going to find people outside of it? But let's go back to councils for a minute. The way that they're run is so bad, I don't think even any of us have a clue about how badly run they are. I bet you they all own loads and loads of loans that they're paying back money on, that they've taken out for years and years and years. We know that an awful lot of the council tax money now goes on gold-plated pensions and salaries. We also know that social care is costing them an absolute fortune. You know, the whole model is wrong, basically.
Completely, and I think many people do have a pretty good idea of how appallingly councils are run, because they'll have had interactions with their council, whatever it might be about, whether it's you know, they're trying to add an extra tiny little bit of an extension to their house, or they want to put an extra window in, or is it that they're not getting their bins collected, whatever it may be. And they just find that it's just a woeful service. I mean, I was trying to rent a tiny little storage unit from a council, and they had approached me saying, we've got this unit for rent, would you like to put in an offer? Just never heard from them again. Right. I mean, you know, I could have raised my offer. I would have happily maybe paid a bit more for it, but they're just not operating in any kind of business-like fashion. And as you say, the burden on councils of the immigration crisis is absolutely immense, and that, I think, is very little understood by voters. It's not talked about. You know, we talk about it on a national basis, but at council level, you know, having to look after all these people who are basically totally dependent on the local authority, whether it's for a roof over their head or all manner of other services, is breaking Britain.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I told you this story before, but I have mentioned it on online before, or on the air before, I should say. And this was told to me by a border force person, right, who said that this is a typical scene every single day, somewhere like Heathrow Airport. 3 women had come from Nigeria. They all had working visas to be nurses in the NHS, right? Along with them, they each had a husband and 5 children. So basically there was 21 of them coming into the country for 3 NHS jobs, none of which would be paying probably more than about £27,000, £28,000. How can that possibly be economically viable?
It isn't economically viable. And I mean, these are shocking illustrations of a policy and an approach to NHS recruitment and immigration in general, which tell you everything you need to know about why the country is collapsing. And we saw that actually in the last set of immigration figures. It's not, you know, this isn't just anecdotal. Those figures showed that people who are coming in on work permits are bringing far more dependents than they are actually, or even student visas are bringing dependents, which means that overall they are not net benefits to the economy. It's just not sustainable, and yet it's carried on, and here we are where we are. All of this has just got to stop. You know, we need a Trump-like approach to it, where, you know, an incoming government says this stops today. It stops the moment we take power. End of. Yeah. We're not having any more coming in on student visas, bringing their dependents. You're either a student or you're an earner, and you're earning a threshold on which you can support a dependent. You can't be both of those things.
Exactly right. And just looking at the Telegraph this morning, there's a piece in their business pages about fears of a recession growing because the CBI say that basically job cuts are coming. Bosses in the private sector are expecting a significant fall in activity over the next 3 months. You've got Charles Tyrwhitt, the founder of that shirt and clothing manufacturer, basically saying, I won't invest in Britain right now. Labour's policies are anti-business. Sir James Dyson, another great entrepreneur, saying that, you know, Rachel Reeves' policies are going to wreck family businesses, millions and millions of pounds worth of potential government revenue is just going to disappear and vanish.
It will disappear, and we've only got a short time to stop that happening. And actually, we do see signs of Rachel from accounts getting a little bit twitchy in a number of her things. So she's rowing back a bit on certain things, and now starting to talk about the third runway, you know, possibility of reviving that whole scheme to build another runway at Heathrow. Clearly, that's an effort to just sort of show some levels of activity, create some jobs, but it's going to cause an absolute almighty clash within the cabinet and all those green nutters who just can't get their head around building anything, and certainly not if it has the word aviation in it.
Well, this is the thing. Although, who knows? I mean, it's somebody who thinks that basically by putting in a third runner at Heathrow, the air around London is going to get cleaner. I'm not sure she's basing her ideas on any kind of science that you and I have heard of. And she was completely stumped, by the way, when she started telling Laura Kuenssberg, oh, don't worry, it's not going to be polluting the country because we're going to be using biodiverse fuel. To which Laura Kuenssberg said, well, why, when they can make that stuff in Grangemouth up in Scotland, are you allowing it to be shut down? She didn't have an answer.
Oh dear, it's so depressing, isn't it? It really is. Have we got anything cheerful to talk about this morning?
I have actually, yeah. Apparently half of Generation Z, Gen Z if you like, wants to be ruled by a dictator. I think that tells you all you need to know about how people have been raised in this country. So there's hope for us yet, because I'm going to make a bid for it, I think. I'm going to go to talk to all the Gen Z people in the office here, and I'll say, right, I'm going to, from this point on, be your dictator. You will bow to my will and you'll like it.
Well, that was what the Independent Republic of Mike Graham was always about,
Exactly.
wasn't it?
Exactly.
I always thought there was a real market for it, actually. I mean, people like being told what to do. We saw that during the pandemic, and they especially like being told what to do if actually the person doing the bossing around has the right ideas and is going to create a high-functioning country. So I'm definitely up for voting for you, Mike. There is
actually, I mean, psychologically, there is a lot of truth to it, because most people actually would rather be told what to do. I mean, look at what happened during COVID. The numbers of people who actually were more than happy to go, oh, I can't do that anymore because they've told me I can't do it. As opposed to the likes of you and I who went, actually, if somebody tells me not to do something, I'm definitely doing it. You know, but the numbers of people, the sheer numbers in this country, probably 90% of people who didn't bother leaving the house, who did exactly what they were told, who went and stood in a supermarket line and metered behind the person in front of them and made sure they wore gloves and a mask. And, you know, I mean, they want to be told how to do it.
They absolutely do. I have to say, it brought out, you know, a side of my personality that has obviously been latent and has probably always been there. But it was an absolute pushback against being told what to do. I go the opposite way. Yeah. I suspect pretty much everybody who works for Talk is like that. You know, we question things. We don't assume that those telling us what to do are smarter than we are or have the right answers. And guess what? We were right about that, weren't we?
Well, we were. And see, the CIA is now coming out and said that basically they're pretty sure that COVID actually came from a lab leak in China. And I wonder where all the lefties are going to be when they start asking for reparations from China for wrecking our economy.
Well, they will be absolutely nowhere to be seen. They won't want that conversation at all. In fact, I've publicly talked about this, and all the lefties start squealing and saying it's a ridiculous thing to ask for. It's not ridiculous at all, actually. And in fact, we've known, I mean, I think on the American intelligence side, they've actually known for quite a few years now that it did come from the lab in China. Just far too much of a coincidence that they just so happened to be, you know, fiddling around making very special types of perfume in that COVID-y lab, just near where the outbreak first began. I don't know. Does that feel like a coincidence to you?
Yeah.
Not.
You don't really need Inspector Clouseau on the case for that one, do you, really? Isabel, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor there.